Hi there, my name is Darcy Jennings, and I'm the founder and head trainer at Communicate9 Training and Behavioral Counseling. And my goal is to connect dogs and people. Have you ever found yourself scratching your head at all of the different information there is out there about socializing dogs and puppies? Or have you found that you've taken some advice and realized it really didn't work out so well for your dog? Well, welcome to the world of dog ownership, where it is so common to be given misleading or inaccurate advice, or advice that's totally conflicting with other advice that you've heard somewhere else. I often have clients come to me who have, rightly so, sought out some advice, maybe on the internet, maybe they asked somebody, maybe somebody at the dog park told them to do something, they applied it to their dog, and it just didn't turn out so well. The outcome for their dog just wasn't that great. So thankfully, they came to a professional or somebody experienced and qualified, such as myself, and I was able to put them on the straight and narrow with what really worked for their particular dog. Now, socialization in the past wasn't really talked about much. 25 years ago when I started in this industry, it wasn't really a big thing. It was known, but it wasn't emphasized to the degree that it is today. Now we know that there are some critical socialization periods for puppies. The first one, or the most important one, being the first 4.5 months of that puppy's life. So let's just say under 5 months of age, that's your most critical socialization period. That's when your puppy is the biggest sponge and the most impactful, where they're going to be the most, they're going to absorb the most and learn the most and be impacted the most by what they encounter. So socialization, because there's so many myths around, let's just say there's so many myths out there around socialization, I decided to create a series of videos to debunk some of the most common ones. And I have to tell you, I asked a whole bunch of other dog professionals about what they heard, the myths that they were frequently heard, and there were so many that I just picked the top ones, and those are the ones I'm going to make some videos about. So hopefully I can clarify some things for you, and in the meantime, if you have other questions, certainly you can always contact me to ask. So let's just talk about the first myth, which is socialization is only about introducing your dog or puppy to other dogs. Now, while that is a component of socialization, that isn't all of what socialization is about. Socialization is about exposure to a variety of circumstances, environments, people, dogs, flooring surfaces, sights, sounds, smells, essentially anything they may come across in their life. Your job in socializing your puppy is to give them exposure to it. We'll talk about the appropriate exposure momentarily, but is to give them some exposure to these things so that when they're a year old and suddenly, let's say, an umbrella appears and somebody opens an umbrella for the first time, your puppy doesn't lose his mind and freak out thinking that this was some alien trying to attack him. So socialization is a combination of introducing your puppy to other dogs and puppies, and a combination of introducing your dog or puppy to a variety of different people, and that's people of all ages, from babies, little toddlers, all the way up to senior citizens, and that's people of different races, so different skin colors, different accents, different body language, men particularly. If dogs are going to have social issues, fear of people, it's likely going to be most pertinent with, or most prevalent with men. So introducing them to men, men with beards, people with sunglasses, baseball caps, hoodies, umbrellas, backpacks, walkers, scooters, canes. There are so many things that we take for granted in our day-to-day life that when our puppies see them for the first time, some puppies are totally resilient. They're just like, whatever. But there are a lot of puppies that cannot handle that stuff and need some decent exposure to it in a mild enough way that they're not overwhelmed by it so that they can move through it. As an example, my own puppy, when she was about, let's say, 4.5, somewhere between 4 and 5 months old, I took her into Sydney for a socialization walk for the first time. And I was actually really shocked at what overwhelmed her, and she was really overwhelmed by a lot of things. The first thing being the traffic. I live out in the country, so having cars going by all the time was just almost too much for her to handle. There were construction workers, road workers working on the side of a road. One of them was holding a stop sign. Super overwhelming for her. They had hard hats, they had fluorescent vests on. So a lot of things that other puppies would have taken for granted, that this little puppy, who was used to living in the country and who had 7 or 8 different homes, had lived in 7 or 8 different places, including an animal shelter, before I got her, just had no exposure to. So socialization is about exposing your puppy to a variety of things. Now, here's what you don't want to do with socializing your puppy, and that's giving them so much exposure that they're overwhelmed, or simply putting them in situations for the sake of getting them used to it. Think about, so let's say your puppy is afraid of other dogs, for example. One of the worst things you can do is just throw them in with a group of other dogs and expect them to just get over it through exposure. And an analogy I like to use is, can you imagine, I use my snake analogy all the time, so those of you who know have heard this analogy before. If you had a fear of snakes, and my way of helping you get over your fear of snakes was to stick you in a room that had a bunch of snakes in it and leave you there, shut the door, leave you there so that you have, well, you could even be in there with me, but really that's a very little consolation to me. If I'm in a room full of snakes and I do not like snakes, I'm going to lose my mind. And depending on how afraid of snakes I am will dictate the severity of my reaction. If I just mildly am like, I don't really like snakes, but the more I hang out with them, the more I see that they're, for the most part, harmless, provided you didn't stick me in with rattlesnakes, I'll go, okay, whatever. But if I'm scared of snakes, and all of a sudden a snake comes at me, and I don't know what it's going to do next because I know nothing about snake behavior, I'm going to start to lose my mind. I'm going to flip my lid. Like, I'm going to lose it completely. So that's what you don't want to do. You don't want to put your puppy in a situation that they can't handle, that's too overwhelming for them. So between now and when we talk next in my next video, what I want you to pay attention to is, if you're in the process of socializing your puppy, think about all the things I mentioned in this video that maybe you haven't thought of exposing them to yet. One of my favorites that a client came up with is taking them up and down the escalator at Uptown Mall. So there's an outdoor escalator. If you live in the city of Victoria, there's an outdoor escalator at Uptown Mall, and you can take your puppy up and down that escalator. You can also stick them in a shopping cart if they feel comfortable. You're not going to stick them in there so that they panic and want to get out, but that's just another way you can hang out with them and do something a little bit unusual. That's, shopping carts are noisy, they're bumpy, and have a little fun with your puppy while you're doing it. While you're at Uptown Mall, you'll also meet 5 million people, and so it will be some pretty solid social exposure to people as well. But again, be mindful that your puppy doesn't become overwhelmed. Unless your puppy is curiously approaching and happily wagging his tail and interacting, be mindful. Maybe take him off to the side and give him a little breathing room. So tune in. Again, I'm going to post another video about another myth number 2 of socialization. Now that we know what socialization is about, we're going to debunk the next one. Talk to you soon.